seats. A couple of things that we need to take up. First, I'm going to go through a roll call with the IT person to see who's on Webex. If you would.
Jordan Mahala. We have Jordan Mahalahan, Matt Sterling, Christy Lee Filter, Michelle Segan, Samantha Potter, Sarah Prim, Tori Arnberger.
Thank you. Did you get that, Connie? Committee, there's a couple of things that we need to do. One of them is housekeeping. We passed out House Bill 2252 last week on Friday. After we had two technical amendments. One of those technical amendments, the second was, after we reviewed it, was substantive in nature. You can't put a substantive technical amendment. But this happens on occasion. I think it happened about 2 weeks ago in insurance. The vice chair came to me and asked me, how do you get out of that? And I said, well, I can tell you the procedure, and that's what we're going to go through. And so for folks that have not been involved in this, if it happens, this is how you handle it. If it's the next day, which this would be the next day, there will be a motion to reconsider, and then I will set it for tomorrow. My understanding is the parties that offered testimony last week will have an agreed upon amendment, and then we'll take the amendment up, and hopefully we will then kick the bill back out. We could do this on the floor of the House. I would rather do it in committee, but had more days passed before we found that, then that would what we would need to do. But this is next day. So without further ado, the chair makes a motion on House Bill 2252 to reconsider. Is there a second? Second by the ranking member. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. We will set it for tomorrow. Now I will go to bill introductions. Matt, you're on, correct? Matt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am.
Thank you. Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill introduction. It is 21 RS 1336. This is the Crown Act. We introduced this last year. There's a Senate companion bill. It's regarding discrimination based on hairstyles.
Thank you. Matt, you have that?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, without objection, it's accepted, Representative. Other bill introductions? Bill introductions from the audience? Seeing none, bill introductions are closed. We're going to take up Bill 2340, House Bill 2340. With that, Matt, would you give us an overview?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. So House Bill 2340, some of you may be familiar with just the Tobacco 21 bill. It would amend the Kansas Cigarette and Tobacco Products Act and the Clean Indoor Air Act to increase the minimum age from 18 to 21 years to purchase or possess cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, consumable materials, and tobacco products. So the bill, going through some of the provisions, would add the terms electronic cigarette and consumable material throughout the Cigarette and Tobacco Products Act. These amendments place electronic cigarettes and consumable materials into the same regulations as far as the sale and possession of cigarettes and other tobacco products. It would also prohibit the smoking of electronic cigarettes under the Clean Indoor Air Act. The bill would amend an education statute 726285, which currently prohibits the use of tobacco products in school buildings. The amendment would specify that all those different types of regulated tobacco products are under the act, and it would specifically prohibit each one in public school buildings. The bill would raise the minimum age to purchase or possess any type of tobacco from 18 to 21. That mirrors the recent federal legislation that raising the age restriction. There are a number of amendments throughout the act that change that age from 18 to 21. and that changes references to there was a reference to minors to persons under the age of 21. The bill would also allow the Department of Revenue to refuse to renew or issue a retail dealer's license to any person who is not of good character, has been convicted of felony or other certain crimes. And they would be able to, it would be a Class B misdemeanor to sell or furnish cigarettes or tobacco products to persons under the age of 18. And the bill would also add electronic cigarettes and consumable materials to this misdemeanor and apply that fine to persons under the age of 21. Lastly, the bill would change the requirements for controlled buys by the Department of Revenue to perform compliance checks of retailers to ensure compliance with the age requirements for the sale of tobacco products. So retail dealers would be subject to a minimum of 2 unannounced controlled buys per year to check compliance. And then if there was a compliance failure, there would be a subsequent controlled buy that would have to occur within 90 days. I'd be happy to try to answer questions the committee might have.
Thank you. Before I take questions, Jordan, you're on, correct? Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm online.
Would you give us a little, from the research perspective, what the federal government did in their federal legislation?
Sure, Mr. Chair. If you'll bear with me for just 1 second, let me pull up a document and then I can provide some extra information.
Thank you.
All right, this is Jordan Milholm with the Legislative Research Department. First of all, I'm going to be providing some information here just from our briefing book article for some extra background information, and this is something I can send out to the committee. We drafted an article on Tobacco 21 for our 2021 briefing book. From the article, on December 20th, 2019, President Trump signed 2019 HR 1865 into law, and that bill contained provisions that raised the federal minimum age for tobacco sales from 18 to 21, as Matt had previously stated. It amended some sections of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and it states that it applies to all covered tobacco products, including cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, hookah tobacco, cigars, pipe tobacco, and electronic nicotine delivery systems, which are essentially the vaping mechanisms. And the new law prohibits the sale of such products to adolescents under the age of 21. And then with that, the FDA also has had some rules that they've enforced. They amended some regulations pertaining to manufacturing, advertising of tobacco package warnings in the Sinar Amendment. And the Sinar Amendment is the a law that requires states to be in compliance with the federal age law for receipt of those substance abuse prevention and treatment block grant funding. And we provided some information on that last biennium. But basically they made some changes that said that gives the states a couple years of time before those provisions are enforced. But it states that the federal government can start withholding 10%, 20%, and 30% in the out years after that deadline is passed. And that would be from those SABG funds. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you guys might have.
Thank you. Committee questions for the reviser or research? Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question for both the research and the revisers.
Please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. For research, Jordan, thank you. Last year when we heard this bill, has there been an amendment at the federal level? Because if I recall correctly, there was a stepping mechanism for noncompliance for 10, 20, 30, up to 40%. And in this new document, you have that we risk losing up to 10% of our SABG money. And so that's my first question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland again with KLRD. I believe that I'm not aware of any amendment. I believe maybe the statement should say 10% for the first year. But my understanding is that in the years after that, it could be stepped up 10% per year up to 2030, and then 40% after that.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question for the revisor. Matt, in this legislation, are we creating a new misdemeanor crime for distribution to what is considered under those individuals under 21? So, and then I have a follow-up, if I may.
Let me just pull that up so I can remind myself real quickly. So under current law, it's a Class B misdemeanor to punishable by that $200 fine for any person to buy any cigarettes or tobacco products for a person under 18. So the bill would change that to buy any cigarettes or tobacco products for a person under 21. So it's not a new crime, but it's applicable to more individuals.
Okay, and then if I may, Mr. Chair, just one more follow-up. If an 18, 19, or 20-year-old is caught with tobacco products, is there a misdemeanor crime or anything like that in this bill?
I got to remind myself. Let me double check on the possession. I don't believe that's the case, but let me double check on the possession and give you an answer shortly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Miller.
Just following up on Jordan's mentioned that if we wanted a copy of that, he'd send it. Could we please?
Yes. Jordan, if you'd send that to Connie, Connie will send it out to all the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will send that right away.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, Representative Wagner.
This would be for Jordan. The SABG money, what is the total amount of that money currently for the state of Kansas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland, KLRD. I do not have the most recent numbers on hand, but the numbers we had inquired about last year. If you just give me 1 second, I can pull up what we had sent out last year. So last year, we had contacted KDADs to find out about those monies. And for fiscal year 19, they stated that Kansas received and expended $12,322,866 for those grant funds in FY 2019.
Further questions? Representative Carpenter, would you object if we start to take testimony, and then when Matt has that answer, we'll get back with you? Thank you. No other questions of the revisor, pending the one question. We'll start with our proponents. First up was one of our own, Representative Dr. John Epley. I would say good morning and welcome to Federal and State Affairs, but I've already done that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Epley, District 63, Northeast Kansas, State Representative, and also our ranking D and our filling in Vice Chair, I understand, correct. Nice to see you this morning. I really do appreciate this opportunity to appear before you today in support of House Bill 2340. In a former life earlier this very session, it was House Bill 2061 that we had pulled and completely redone after realizing that that was probably not going to fly. You know, I would have to say that I've probably been more involved with this issue encased in this bill than anyone else here in the State House, and I really do feel that this is a very, very important piece of legislation going forward. I've had the great opportunity to work with our chairman on this, and he's been more than patient with me in the process, so I thank you, Chairman, for that. Originally, 2 years ago, I had wanted to promote and raise the legal age for the consumption and use of any and or all tobacco products to age 21 in the state of Kansas. The legal age at that time was 18, as most of you know. This was very topical because of the catastrophic downstream health effects, particularly of vaping in our youth, smoking, chewing with teenagers, and smokeless tobacco, and our young adults in the state of Kansas. Well, as of December 19th of 2019, that dramatically changed, and we were still going forward with the former bill in the session last year, and we learned a lot from that, and that's why we came out with a new bill today that's before you, which I will title, for lack of a better term, as a conformity bill going forward. There was a great deal of language in that bill that did deal with vaping, flavor vapes, menthol cigarettes, vending machines, among other things. It really got down in the weeds on tobacco. And I did, as a physician, actually learn quite a bit about the aspects of all that legally. There was also language in there about raising the vendor fee for the sellers of tobacco products. And we found that, that was problematic in and of itself for some state representatives. All that language is gone. And what you have before you now is what I call a conformity bill that actually took over 25 pages to end up in conformity. And I really do want to thank the reviser for drafting this bill, because there's a lot of state law that we have to be, and federal law we have to be in conformity with. And hence you have a 25-page bill before you. As we were running this bill last year, like I said, in December, we raised the legal, December of 19, the legal age was raised to 21 across the board, and that made this much easier actually going forward as we revise this bill in this session. And this does put us in line for SAMHSA grants and also for not being penalized for SABG funds as outlined by legislative research. So just to conclude, both my parents died of tobacco-related disease, one of COPD and one of lung cancer, both in their early to mid-70s. Both began smoking as teenagers in southeast Kansas. And I know that they would have lived a lot longer had they not taken up tobacco products. And I believe that this bill then does really finish the job for our young people in the state of Kansas, young adults, to promote healthy lifestyles and to make sure that no legal tobacco availability is there until age 21 and that we are in federal compliance. The only piece of this that's left in, and I would mention, is the Kansas Clean Air Act of 2012, which I thought was good. And otherwise, it's strictly a conformity bill, and I think that's why you see so many folks lined up in support of it today. At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to stand for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will go to the next proponent, Christy Clark, MD, American Academy of Pediatrics, on Webex. Dr. Clark?
Thank you, Chairman Barker. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Dr. Christy Clark, and I serve as president of the Kansas American Academy of Pediatrics. And we represent over 400 pediatricians in your state. And we are in favor of this bill because we find it's a great step forward, great progress, and it's an opportunity to do some good in the world, to increase the age to buy and to possess tobacco to age 21. I do want to point out that ideally your pediatricians would like to see a flavor ban. And the reason is because these highly addictive substances that contain nicotine, the flavor helps mask the bitter taste, and it just makes them more easily for people to want to try them and to continue using them. I do know that your pediatricians stand with your family medicine physicians on this and that they have submitted written testimony. On a personal note, I would like to echo some of what Dr. Epling said. I have many family members who smoke. Pediatrician, I take care of many children who use e-cigarettes. Almost all of them start as teens. This is highly addictive substance containing nicotine, and it's almost impossible to stop, particularly for those who start as teens. They take a lot of time to try to stop. It costs a lot of money to try to stop. Plus, they have healthcare related issues, which costs money. I would very much like to see less Kansans suffer the way I've seen members of my family and coworkers and teens I take care of suffer. Particularly in Kansas, I would like to point out to this committee that tobacco use is the leading cause of preventive deaths that we can prevent. I believe I may have just lost everybody.
You're still on. Go ahead.
Good. Very north of Dodge, so my internet hasn't been great. But tobacco use, I would like to reiterate that tobacco use is actually the leading cause of death that we can prevent in Kansas, over 4,000 deaths a year. We think that almost 30% of our cancers in Kansas are linked to tobacco use. There's just a huge cost of life and to healthcare and to society with this use. Over 10% of high schoolers in Kansas actually use e-cigarettes. That's really important to note. because over 95% of adults who smoke began before the age of 21. And we're getting lots of new evidence to show us that e-cigarettes are actually a pathway to smoking. Even though some adults may use e-cigarettes to help them stop, for teens and young people, it's actually the reverse. They start e-cigarettes and then that leads to smoking tobacco. And the younger someone starts smoking, the harder it is to quit. We know this for a fact. Some of the national data show that if we are to increase the age to purchase tobacco to 21, that actually there'll be a 12% decrease in the prevalence of smoking. So again, the pediatricians in your state are highly in favor of this, as it is a bill that will help improve the health for all Kansans, but we really also want to urge you to revisit the flavor ban, because that's really what makes a lot of these products very attractive to young people for them to pick them up and start them. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. If you would remain on the line, there may be some questions of you when we conclude the proponent's testimony. Next up would be Tom Pilots, Fuel True. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Federal and State Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Tom Palace with Fuel True, representing convenience stores throughout the state of Kansas, and we stand in support of House Bill 2340, mainly because it aligns us with the federal laws. Current law allows a person in some counties, and cities and counties, to purchase at 18 years of age. If you remember, last couple of years, several cities and counties passed ordinances that required it to go to 21 years of age, which caused problems for our industry with companies of multiple units that are spread out from county to county. So that is the main reason why we support it, but also it just brings it in line with federal guidelines. The one thing, there is another provision in the bill that requires 2 controlled buys. Currently, KATE, the Kansas and Tobacco Enforcement Group, they do 1 controlled buy today. Adding another one is fine. If KATE finds that there's a problem, they will go back to that unit 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever the case may be. But I also want to tell you that the tobacco retailers in Kansas have done an exemplary job of checking for IDs and making sure that the proper people that purchase tobacco are of legitimate age. And we have over a 90% compliance rate, which has been that way for the last 3 to 5 years. Years ago, we had a terrible rate, and we in Kansas paid the price for that, where we could have potentially lost some federal funding. When they talk about that Sinar number, you have to be at 80% to get federal funds. So we're in excess of 90% now. So that has been a good deal for the state of Kansas as well as our retailers. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that lets you know that retailers are doing their job. They're checking IDs. Whether you philosophically agree with 18 or 21 is irrelevant at this point. That's what the federal law is, and we're going to marry that with this bill. So with that, I'll answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. My last proponent that's going to offer testimony is Lee Flinter, Kansas Association of School Boards and the United School District Administrators of Kansas by Webex. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee. I'm appearing today for the Kansas Association of School Boards and the United School Administrators of Kansas, as you noted. We support House Bill 2340 because we believe it would assist our member school districts. We represent the 286 public school districts in the state of Kansas. Most of our districts have taken individual actions to ban vaping devices in their schools, but we feel placing the Indoor Clean Air Act provisions in state law would assist our members in their enforcement of anti-vaping policies that they have across the state. And that is actually it for my testimony, and I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. This is the appropriate time. Questions from the committee. Representative Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to reserve a lot of my comments for the debate portion of this bill. However, I just wanted to truly say thank you to the representative from Atchison for making this a compliance bill and removing a lot of the aspects that we saw in this bill from the previous iteration of it. So thank you very much, Representative. Just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of the, yes, Representative Ressman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for any of the presenters. This is directed at retail establishments.
I'm going to go to Representative Epley, who brought this bill. Representative, you would?
Yes.
So if a law enforcement officer conducts a traffic stop and someone's under 21 years of age, and they see a tobacco product in the vehicle, should they go ahead and arrest the juvenile or the person, or issue him a ticket? Or
Thank you, Representative. I would defer to say that according to the way this is written, it would fall to the same laws that we utilize currently under age 18 prior to December of 2019.
And I'll echo that. I agree. Presently, they do a summons for someone under the age of 18, possession of a tobacco product under the age of 18.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Yeah, if I can jump in and answer both Representative Carpenter's question and add some to this question as well.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to answer the earlier question, I wanted to double check. So it's not a misdemeanor. It's classified, the possession is classified as a cigarette and tobacco infraction under KSA 215102. And so the penalty for that is a $25 fine. And if the individual is a minor, so if they're under 18, a judge may require them to appear in court with a parent or legal guardian. So if that adds some information for the questions the committee is asking.
Was that helpful, Representative Carpenter? I would note, and over the years I've had a number of these cases, most courts have a deferment on these type of citations and ask them to attend the class, smoking cessation class or tobacco cessation class. And if they accomplish that, then the citation is dismissed on a first offense. But further questions of the conferee? Yes, Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question for the reviser or Representative Epley. How does this legislation treat those that are in possession of a device like a e-cigarette device, but they don't have like the tobacco or nicotine product with it? Is that treated separately, or?
I would direct that to the reviser.
Thank you.
I'm going to double check the definition and give you an answer shortly.
That would be good. Representative Wagner, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to the gentleman, the lobbyist for the convenience stores. My question is, you mentioned the fact of some confusion because some city and states, or some cities and counties already have an 18-year-old ban, or 20-year-old limit, as it would be. But because of the federal law now at 21, I mean, aren't all convenience stores in Kansas currently following the 21-year-old limit? Is it because it is the federal law that it's 21 currently? Aren't you already in compliance, all the convenience stores at 21?
No.
No, I'll help you there. Federal law only applies to federal property, federal reservations, where they control. The state, pursuant to our Constitution, all those rights would be reserved to the state. And that's the reason they put the incentive that we're going to cut some funding if you don't do this. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Right. If nowadays, if you're in the military and you're 18 years old, you can't smoke on the military reservation. Presently, you can smoke off the reservation. However, you're still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So if they catch you, they could give you an Article 15 in the military. With that, last question, Representative Heiberger.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt the reviser, but I have another reviser question.
Yes, Matt?
Now on page 18, line 41, you have the bill there. Page 18, line 41. There's an 18 that's not struck out for selling, giving, or furnishing cigarettes. Is that a drafting error, or is there, if not, could you give me the rationale for leaving that age at 18?
Let me double check that, but I think that would need to be changed, but I'll have to double check that. And circling back on the previous question, while I'm thinking about that, the definition of electronic cigarette, if I can pull that back up. Just means a battery-powered device, whether or not the device is shaped like a cigarette that can provide inhaled doses of nicotine by delivering a vaporized solution by means of cartridges or other chemical delivery systems. So the definition, while the device needs to be capable of providing doses of nicotine, doesn't indicate that nicotine needs to be present.
Is that helpful, Representative? I'm going to move to the, I want to direct your attention to the written proponents that are listed. Brandon Skidmore, Kansas Public Health Association; Christy Wells, Oral Health, Kansas; Ron Hines, Reynolds American; Mark DeCenti, KNEA; John Allison, Olathe Public Schools; Dr. Tanya, forgive me here, American, USD 229, Blue Valley; Dr. Chad Johanning, Kansas Academy of Family Physicians; and Betty Saunders. I'm going to go to the neutrals now, which are appearing. First up is Sarah Prim, Tobacco Free Kansas Coalition by Webex. Are you on?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate this chance to speak before you today on behalf of Tobacco Free Kansas Coalition, our board of directors, and our 300 members across the state. We are providing neutral testimony. We acknowledge the value of raising the age in Kansas to match the federal statute. That ensures that we continue to get those funds. We also very much appreciate the addition of e-cigarettes to the definition of smoking. It's very important to get that in there because of the particles that we know are in e-cigarette emissions. What kind of offsets that for us is what was discussed earlier about the purchase, youth, and possession penalties for youth. Evidence indicates that penalizing youth is not effective for tobacco control. It diverts attention away from effective strategies, and it tends to disproportionately impact minorities in our state. We would also point out that we appreciate the increase in compliance checks from 1 to 2. However, we also note that tobacco retail license fee remains $25 for 2 years. That was set in 1972. And so we would encourage an increase in that retail license fee to support full enforcement. So for that is the other main component of why we have chosen to go neutral on this. And we do thank the chair and the committee for giving us this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. If you would stay on the line for questions. Next up is Ryan Leisler, Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Ryan, are you on the website? Or are you here?
Hi, good morning, Chair. We were actually wanting to submit written testimony.
Very well, written only.
Thank you.
Anyone else here today appears, or we'll have questions of Sarah Penn if there is questions on neutrals. Seeing no questions, then I will close that portion of testimony. I have no opponents on this bill listed. Is there any opponents in the audience? Anyone in the audience that is a proponent or neutral? Again, seeing none, then committee, I will close the hearing on 2340. I would advise you that you may see this if we have time on Thursday or Friday of this week. Another point that I need to make, housekeeping. I think most of you have received an email from the majority leader, and recall, the first week we were in session, I had the reviser come in and talk about coma. There was an incident where an email was sent out and a reply by a member of the committee to all the members. That is a violation of the coma. My suggestion is if you get an email, you never, ever reply to the entire chain on the email. If you want to make an individual comment, then it goes back to the originator of the email. So, I just wanted to touch on that this morning. But normally, it's better to do an individual email or text to another committee member, but only one. I mean, we could probably do more, but it's always better just to have an individual conversation. With that, I'll open bill introductions one last time today. Seeing no bill introductions, bill introductions is closed. Tomorrow, we'll be working some bills. The bill that we did the reconsideration on today. We may, I'm only saying may, work on an additional bill, but not decided on that. There's some amendments that's going to be drafted. With that, anything for the good of the committee? Seeing none, if I identify that bill that we're going to work, I will have it sent out by email. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, folks. Oh, I would mention on Wednesday is the first day of the medical marijuana bill. I always like to keep you abreast of what's going on. I will probably be about 15 or 20 minutes late. My vice chair will be chairing that at the beginning. I've got an appointment at the VA, and we try not to miss those because then they kick you down 3 months. So I will probably, I anticipate being late about 15, 20 minutes. It could be longer, but I don't think so. With that, we are adjourned.